there's an element we talk about prohibition. I'm sure you talk about prohibition a lot. You know, when you make something illegal, when you make something dirty or shameful or bad or wrong, the first thing you want to do is go and see why. Right? The experiments they do where they put like, there's great videos on YouTube. You put a couple of kids in a room with like some like candy or like, some sort of like sweet, like a I don't know what sweets you have, but like a jelly bean or something, and it's just one jelly bean in there, and they're like, all right, we're just gonna leave the room, please don't touch that. If you don't touch it, I'll come back, I'll give you a whole bag of jelly beans. And the kids like eyes light up, right? But they walk out the room and it's like seconds, not even like minutes, but seconds before one of the kids is kind of just like pick it up and like sniff it, right? Because maybe, and they like maybe touch it with their just a little bit of a lick, and oh no, I didn't eat it though, right? And then before you know it, what's happened? That thing is gone, right? It is gone, and the other kid is like just mad because they didn't get to do it, right? Because they know they're getting in trouble, but they should have been the one that moved fast. The point being that that's our human nature when you start prohibiting things. And so there's a great example of this. So there's an old Eastern story of two monks are walking down the road, and so they're on a long journey and they're walking for hours and hours, and they get to a stream, and there's a young woman standing by the stream, and she says, I can't get through this stream, the current's too strong, could one of you help me? And so one of the monks just picks her up, throws her over his shoulder, and he crosses through the stream, pops her back down and says, all the best. And so the two monks continue walking along in silence. Maybe 2-3 hours goes by. And one of the monks kind of looks up to the other monk and he says, why did you pick up that woman? He said, we're not supposed to pick up women. We're not supposed to touch women. That's impure. And the other monk just responds, he says, you've been carrying that woman for 3 hours? I put her down ages ago. and this is the point. This is what we're doing with sex. There is not a Christian in this country that is not absolutely sex crazy because we prohibit it so much and we make it such a puritanical, hidden, dirty, shameful thing. And we do it with our kids, and we do it with our youth groups, and we do it with our congregations. And then what happens is when you get married, we're suddenly supposed to flip a switch and it becomes a beautiful, pure, sanctified thing. And it does not work like that at all. It doesn't work at all like that. In fact, I deal with a lot of young couples and different people that are going through issues, and I recently talked to a sexologist whose one job is working in therapy with young couples, and she said that there's a shift in young couples in America. She's been doing it for about 30-40 years, and she says there's a shift that happens, and she couldn't believe it, where young couples suddenly started coming to her with so much shame, a whole nother level of shame. They couldn't enjoy sex because they were so racked with shame and guilt after marriage. And she said she tracked it back, and where it begins is these young couples were in youth groups around the time purity culture came in. That's what has caused it. So they've been taught, don't look at another woman, don't lust after a woman, don't touch women, you can't do anything until you say, don't even hold hands. The Joshua Harris, I know he's changed a lot now, but the old thing of like, I kissed Dayton goodbye, I'm not even going to kiss her till my wedding day,
Right.
And don't you dare like touch yourself, don't explore your sexuality, don't try and learn about your body and how it operates. All of that is all shameful. And so what you have, right, because when you prohibit stuff, what happens, right? We break a male and a female youth group up. Right, the females go off and learn about it's okay to be single, and and you keep pursuing God, and a right man will come, which is a lie because there's 2 women for every 1 male in the church that are single. But we teach that because that's how we're dealing with that lie right now, which is not a healthy way. That's a really bad way to deal with that. But then the guys, what do they go and talk about? We know, porn. That's all they talk about. Man, I got broke into a male female group for like close to a decade, and all we ever talked about was like, well, did you masturbate this week? How are you doing with your addictions? How are you doing? And I'm like,
I'm gonna hold you accountable.
Every single person in that thing is guilty of it, and then the people holding you accountable are guilty of it as well. It's just like a big system. And so what you have though is you have all these guys growing up in the church, and they're a slave to their hormones, their emotion, all this different stuff, and so they're gonna watch porn. That's what they do. They go do it because it's so prohibited. They go do it. They masturbate. They ejaculate, and then they just go woomph. Right? And so it's that second, you just shame. How crap are you? How guilty are you? You're useless. You couldn't even are you kidding me? It's been like it's only been like 5 minutes since the last time, like not quite, but like how are you so, And so what happens is they go through that cycle for years. They finally get married. They have sex. And that's great. That's the best 11 seconds of their life, right? But what happens after they come? Shame hits like a brick house. And so they start to even associate shame with this good thing, this right thing, this marriage. Not only that, they're bringing their education on sex because the church isn't teaching them anything, and in a lot of places schools aren't teaching them healthy things. So their education on sex is like Pornhub or something, right? It's a porn website. That's their educational source. And anyone that's watched porn knows, and anyone that's had like healthy, normal sex knows that those two are not the same
Totally
thing,
different. Totally
right?
different.
And so there's so many dynamics that we're bringing into play here that is just ruining sex and marriage. It's ruining our young people. It's causing them to be racked with obsession over sex. So sorry, that's just all to go off on that comment of like, I thought of the most extreme thing, but that's what we do. We think of sex and we immediately jump to that extreme because sex hasn't become normalized. It's a hidden thing.
And that's really where you're talking about is basically that's happening mostly in the church. Because I know when I went to Samoa, they live in Follies, and Follies don't have walls.
Yep.
And my thought was to the guy, hey, what do you guys do about sex? You see like a mat over here, mat over here, mat over here.
Yeah.
Everything's open. And I'm like, do your parents have sex? And they're like, yeah, we just respect what they're doing. And I was like, you see and hear your parents having sex, and then not only that, like you're in a village and there's no walls dividing you from your neighbors. I mean, I was like, wow, this is
it's an introvert's
wild.
nightmare.
Right. And I was just thinking, this is wild. And like basically the whole island is like that, made up of little Follies, villages where there's no outside walls, no inside walls. And he goes, we just respect and honor. And I thought, what an interesting system. And that's what we're talking about, like the cultural thought of what's right and wrong with sex. And, can you be more open about sex at an earlier age, versus the shame of sex. And that's an interesting thing about purity. And that's where I'm kind of at with my thought on raising kids is, do you say to your son, hey, don't watch pornography, don't jerk off, or God's going to get mad at you? Or how do you handle it? Or do you tell your daughter, don't have sex, or are you willing enough to go to your son and say, well, how did that make you feel? Well, why did you feel that way? Well, what did you feel? And consider the conversation with them and helping settle in their heart the information. I mean, with your daughter goes out, she has sex like you talked about before. Daughters were having sex at 13, getting married, basically forced into marriage. Well, kids are having sex at 13. All right, well, how did it make you feel? Well, why? Why did you feel you wanted to do it? Well, why? How did you feel after it? How did he make you feel? Do you think this is a long-lasting thing? Like, when will we be able to go through all of the questions openly and honestly without feeling the, I can't believe you. Yeah. And I think that's kind of where it is if we want our kids to stop doing the things that we want them to stop doing, we have to then step up into the communication. You had a great fact about parents who talk to their kids. Go into that.
So it was actually the same sexologist. So this is a woman called Dr. Tina Shermer Sellers. Really worth checking out. She has a book called Sex, God, and the Conservative Church. And she's got great resources out there, and she does marriage therapy, and she does all sorts of work with young teenagers, young adults and stuff. So really great person to go check out anyway. But when I was talking with her, she was saying that they've done long-term studies on what keeps families close. What causes a family to stay tight-knit, and what causes families to kind of grow apart. And there's a whole host of different things. But one of the things they found out was long-term, if you want to find out what's going to make it most likely for your kids to stay close to you when they're adults. So it's not just throughout their childhood. That's a struggle enough, right? But many kids, they leave home and they're like, man, I go home for Thanksgiving, but I am not close to my family. I don't look forward to Thanksgiving, And she's like, the adult children that stay close to their parents consider their friendship, their relationship with their parents as friendship. They see their parents as close friends. And obviously still mom and dad, right? I'm not saying like they're just like, yeah, that's just my buddy, mom. But they see them really closely and value them and are open with them and so on. the number one thing that correlated with that was, did their parents discuss sex openly and at an early age, right through their childhood, and did they allow their children to explore that sex on some level? Now, when I'm saying sex, I'm not meaning intercourse. This is a big problem. Again, in America, we jump to the nth degree, but sex is so much bigger than intercourse, right? There's so many different elements of sex, and anyone that's got a good sex life can probably tell you there's a lot of things that are enjoyable that aren't just sex, you know? And all of that is involved in sex. Sex isn't what we're talking about when we talk about intercourse, or intercourse isn't what we're talking about when we talk about sex. Intercourse is a part of sex, but there's a lot of other elements to sex. And so she's saying allowing children to understand themselves, explore that, figure out what it is, you know, figure out when they turn 12, 13, they start getting erections every 4 minutes, right? You know, I mean, I don't know about you remember what that was like. I remember what that was like.
I'm seeing it now with my son, right?
There you go, right? And I'm sure he's really glad that you just said that.
Right. You're welcome.
Sorry, man. But you know, at some point, he's going to figure out there's different things that happen when that happens, right? And he's going to explore. But are you giving freedom for him to figure that out? And are you allowing that to be in a safe space where he can discuss it with you? When he can go, hey, Mom, like, this is what's happening. Or Dad, like, this has ever happened to you? What's it about? Why does that happen? And
he doesn't think it happens to me.
Right. Well, yeah, there you go. Ouch. Yeah.